There we go. We're going to call this meeting to order of the Delray Beach Historic Preservation Board meeting of October 15th, 2025. You please take the roll.
Chris Cabezas.
Here.
Benjamin Baffer.
Here.
Vlad Dimitrescu is absent. Richard Kasser is absent. Peter Dwyer is absent. Carol Perez.
Here.
John Miller.
Here. Any changes to the agenda this evening?
Nope, no changes.
Oh, I'm sorry, you asked me that.
In general.
No changes.
I do have one question. So I saw the email about the training.
There's two.
And I assumed it was next time. So
There's two. It's on the agenda.
yeah, I saw.
Yeah.
So there's two trainings.
There's one this month, and then next month are the flood adaptation standards.
Okay. Since we have so many board members absent tonight, would it
They
be
can go back and watch it.
okay?
And then if they have questions, they can bring, I've already emailed one of the board members that if there's questions, they can bring those questions in November, since we'll be doing a training then too.
Okay.
Yeah. Good
All-
thought. I thought of it too, and I think we just need to push through.
Okay. So no changes to the agenda. Can we get an approval?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. Carol.
Can we do a all in favor?
You can.
All in favor,
Aye.
say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Moving on to minutes. We have three groups of minutes here, June 4th, July 2nd, and September 17th. I believe we need to make motions separately on these.
Before we do, Brittany, I did not get that 1 month revised. Which month was it? Do you remember if it was June or July?
We were talking about June 4th, yeah.
So on the June set of minutes, there is mention to emails that were sent in regards to one of the projects, and we're going to strike that, remove that off the minutes, because we can't put emails as public comment. I didn't get a chance to update it before it went out, so
Okay.
that one change, if your motion could just note that.
Okay.
You don't actually have to do them all separately if you want to just say with approving all of the minutes on the agenda with the change to the June minutes as stated by Michelle.
Okay. I mean, I looked them over. I didn't see anything
that's fine.
issues.
So I'll make a motion to approve all three agenda items with the condition of the June 4th having the email stricken.
I'll second.
Okay, we have motion and a second. Any discussion? Brittany? Or actually, let's just do a all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, swearing in of the public, such as it is tonight. If there's any members of the public who would like to speak on any item tonight, please stand up and be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. By the authority vested in me as the notary in the state of Florida, do you swear to affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, comments from the public. If any member of the public would like to speak to the board on any item which is not on the agenda tonight, now's the time to do so. Seeing none, we're going to move on to item 7, quasi-judicial hearings, and I'm going to read the rules. This hearing shall be conducted in accordance with the City of Delray Beach's quasi-judicial rules. The applicant and the city shall be permitted to present their case. The public shall be allowed to speak for 3 minutes or for a maximum of 6 minutes if the person represents an organization or a group of people who are present but agree not to speak. The city commission, board members, staff, and the applicant may be allowed to cross-examine a witness. The city or the applicant will be allowed to offer rebuttal testimony. The decision to approve or deny an application or appeal may not legally be made upon the personal views as to whether a project is a good project or not, nor may a decision be based on the number of citizens who support or oppose a particular project. The law requires that all decisions must be made on the basis of whether the project meets requirements of law, the comprehensive plan, and the land development regulations. Okay. We're going to move on then to item A, Certificate of Appropriateness, HP 117-2025. Is there any ex parte communication on this item?
None. Nope.
I've driven past the site.
None.
Thank you. For the record, Michelle Hewitt, planner, and I'd like to read into the record 250 Royal Court for file number HP 117-2025 for a level 1 site plan and certificate of appropriateness application.
Just for the record, Michelle Hewitt is now senior planner.
Congratulations.
Hello. Victor Cook with 250 Royal Court LLC. I'm here to speak in defense of our application for the installation of stucco in place of wood siding for our commercial, non-historically contributing office building. As mentioned previously, we're looking to replace our decorative siding with stucco, as well as update our existing windows with new windows with white frame and gray glass. These windows are impact resistant, as well as replace failing gutters that are currently existing on the property. Our objective is to preserve the historical character of the building whilst still improving the overall appearance, as well as the durability and quality of the structure as a whole. There you can see the location of the building in regards to the overall neighborhood. The existing conditions of the building are as such. Currently there is wooden siding in place on the building. A permit had previously been filed, and work had been completed to repair the existing wooden siding. However, even those repairs made only a few years ago have already started to show deterioration. So the current proposal is to repair those damaged segments, as well as overall replace the wooden siding with a new stucco exterior. Additionally, the doors that are currently in place, they're very old. A lot of them are very outdated. They're inefficient from an energy standpoint, as well as several leaks have been detected throughout the property around those entry points. Now, in a kind of larger context, several other commercial use buildings in the neighborhood, also designated as non-historically contributing within the historical district, have already transitioned to a more modern stucco exterior, as well as a gray framed window for their exterior property. There shown are the locations of a few buildings. The first one located at 205 Northeast 5th Terrace, very lovely exterior, very nice building. They have a stucco exterior with a relatively modern finish, white frame windows, and a slight graying on the tint in a similar frame to what we are proposing for our structure. As well, 250 North Dixie Boulevard, another similar kind of situation, commercial use building. Exterior is stucco with those same kind of gray framed windows that we're additionally proposing. And then lastly, in the neighborhood itself, there's the 230 George Bush Boulevard property. Again, similar situation, stucco exterior and gray windows and doors. So it shows a precedent in the area of other commercial buildings transitioning from the wooden siding to a more durable and weather resistant stucco exterior. Lastly, there's this building towards the southern end of the historic neighborhood, 241 Northeast 4th Street. Another relatively modern looking exterior on this very nice looking building, stucco, and again the gray windows. Apologies for sounding repetitive. So, as I mentioned previously, the purpose of these improvements is to eliminate the existing issue with the flaking of the siding and the deterioration due to moisture in the air and repeated rain, storm weathering, other environmental effects that have been negatively impacting the building quite significantly. Additionally, stucco is proven to be much longer lasting, more weather resistant, and in general, it's just a much better exterior finish for the Florida climate. The new windows that we're proposing are going to, as I mentioned previously, improve energy efficiency as well as temperature retention and interior comfort, whilst also being impact resistant, again, making the building more resistant to severe weather instances. And lastly, the overall aesthetics of the exterior of the building are likely to improve significantly due to the more uniform appearance of the stucco, the more newer, less deteriorated appearance of the exterior windows, doors, and gutters. So here's a rough rendering of what our proposed exterior would look like. Still relatively similar to the character of the existing building, whilst maintaining a new, more effective, more resistant exterior to the elements. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Staff will do theirs, and then if we have any questions, we'll come back to you.
Just want to make a quick comment that I've said to you guys before, like, you're not a precedent-setting board. You're going to look at every case by case, and make decisions based on that. To the extent that I allowed it in, to the extent that it's relevant to, like, rhythm of buildings on the streets or something like that. But but it shouldn't be used as, evidence of precedent.
Okay.
But go ahead.
Once again, Michelle Hewitt, Senior Planner, and this is for a Level 1 Site Plan and Certificate of Appropriateness application for 250 Royal Court. Here on the screen is an area with the subject property outlined in blue, where you can see the location of Royal Court, Northeast 3rd Avenue, and Northeast 5th Terrace. I'm going to go over some brief history on the property and the architect that designed this. The subject property was constructed in 1972 by Charles E. Toth. At the time, he was the property owner and architect. The subject property was originally constructed for Toth's architectural office. It contained an apartment on the first floor and an office on the second floor. Then, in 1977, an addition was constructed to the existing structure by Toth. The subject structure is considered non-contributing to the Del Ida Park Historic District and is expected to be reclassified as a contributing structure with the future resource survey of the Historic District. The mid-century style structure exists in its original design with a flat roof, red-framed windows, board and batten wood exterior siding, and a wood deck on the north side of the structure. Toth himself was born in Pennsylvania in 1927 and moved here in 1963 to Delray Beach, where he is considered an accomplished architect in the city. There have been some alterations throughout the years on this structure. Most recently, on July 10th, 2024, staff administratively approved a request for ground level improvements, including reconfiguring the parking area, installation of a dumpster enclosure, new sidewalks, and landscape modifications. Exterior modifications to the existing structure included painting the railings, trim, and windows a navy color, replacing of decking, replacing of stairs, and moving the existing wall behind the fountain. The request before the board today is for the removal of the existing wood siding for the installation of smooth stucco siding, installation of white frame aluminum windows after the fact, and repainting of the structure. Here on the screen, I have the structure prior to what's out there today. So this is the front or north elevation where you can see the existing board and batten wood siding and the red frames, the dark red frames that are painted on the structure. And this is what's currently out there today. So they have been replacing the wood siding. That's actively what was going on the site. And you can see the windows that are currently installed, the white frame aluminum with the gray glass, and comparatively between the two, the appearance here of this north elevation. Here's another angle of the front or north elevation. It's a little blurry, but you can kind of see the overall appearance of the structure with those dark red frames and the wood. And then here's what's currently out there today. This is on the left is the before with the dark red frames and that wood siding. And then the current, the wood siding is still currently out there. The windows are installed with the gray glass and the white frame aluminum. Here is the rear on the left, the south faces the south elevation. Again, red frames on the left and then those white frames on the right. And then this is the side or east elevation before on the left and then currently out there today on the right. As mentioned previously, the request is to change the wood siding to smooth stucco siding, painted white, paint the structure white, and then to utilize white aluminum frame windows with gray glass. Going into the staff report, here is an excerpt from our Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. The structure is classified as a non-contributor. However, it is on the cusp of becoming a contributing structure, given its style and association with Charles Toth, a Delray Beach architect. An alteration to the exterior of this structure, namely changing the wood from wood to stucco, could have a negative impact upon its historic integrity. And here's just a screenshot here where it's not recommended from the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, where a not recommended approach is replacing historic wood features and altering wood features which are important in defining the overall historic character of the building, potentially resulting in the loss of the character. Going into the visual compatibility standards, this section is specifically for the relationship of materials, texture, and colors. This particular standard indicates that the facade of a building and/or hardscaping shall be visually compatible with the predominant materials used in the historic buildings and structures within the subject historic district, where it's specifically recommended to utilize materials that match the old in design, color, texture, and other visual qualities, and where possible, materials. Here are two screenshots from our Delray Beach Historic Preservation Design Guidelines regarding siding. On the left is recommended approaches, and the main item here is that replacement should be designed using the existing physical evidence as the pattern, so elements are based on the original details. Going back to the visual compatibility standards, again, this is for relationship of materials, textures, and colors. There is concern with the color of the proposed window frames. As previously mentioned, there was an administrative approval for navy window frames, and that was considered appropriate because it was still maintaining that dark color painted frames and allowing for some modification, keeping the same overall appearance of the dark color frames. It is believed that the dark red frames were original to the structure and should be maintained. Additionally, mid-century modern structures are commonly seen with painted or dark colored frames. There is also concern with the appearance/style of windows. The original building permit, which you can see in the bottom right, shows a mutton for each window, which had been retained over the years up until recently, which you saw through the images that I was going through previously. And they should be replaced like in kind to maintain the appearance, where the proposal is to utilize a single pane. And then here is a screenshot here. Again, from our Delaware Beach Historic Preservation Design Guidelines, where it's not recommended to change the historic appearance through adding a finish or color that changes the appearance of the frame. Going into the visual compatibility standard of architectural style, the application of a new stucco pattern could create a false sense of historical development by introducing elements definitive of a more modern interpretation of the style. Thus, the board will need to make a determination that the proposed materials and appearance are appropriate for the structure, as well as the Del Ida Park Historic District. Here are the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation and the visual compatibility standards with those two items highlighted that were used to analyze the request. And then our certificate of appropriateness findings. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any members of the public want to comment on this item? Seeing none. Mr. Applicant, if you have any rebuttal to staff, if you please, up at the front.
I would like to comment that these improvements to the exterior of the building are in conjunction with an overall improvement to the larger site of the structure, which is already permitted. Which include the improvements of landscaping, the addition of new irrigation systems, the addition of paver pathways, and the expansion of the parking lot and reshaping to improve the current deteriorated condition of the structure. The replacement of the siding would be paramount to completing this effort, as many of the landscaping additions are adjacent to the structure and thus could not be completed without the replacement of these of the stucco exterior.
Okay, thank you. If we have any questions, we'll be sure to come back to you. Staff, any rebuttal?
I have a few things just to note. The 4 addresses, I know Kelly outlined that there's no precedent setting, but I just wanted to address the 4 addresses that were outlined by the applicant in their presentation. 205 Northeast 5th Terrace used to be owned by the Platts. That's Mediterranean revival style architecture where stucco would be appropriate on an exterior. 250 North Dixie Boulevard historically has had a stucco exterior. 230 George Bush Boulevard, the Hacker Building, while it does have stucco, some of it's an applied stucco, so it looks like wood siding in parts of it. And 241 Northeast 4th Street, the dentist office on the corner of Lake Ida and 3rd is new construction. So just those few notes. And then also to clarify something, the original building permit, it looked like, I failed to mention this, or Michelle and I talked about it, and I meant to note it. The bottom windows we believe were operable, so if you saw that original building permit, we're not sure if they were replaced or they're still operable today, but you can kind of see that diagonal or that diamond shape dash line at the bottom of each window would have meant that those were operable at the bottom. So just a few notes.
Called a hopper window.
Thank you. Hopper.
I have a question for either staff or the applicant. So these windows are obviously installed. Was there a permit
So
given for this?
the applicant came in and got a COA approval to replace the windows, and the compromise was navy blue frames. There would still be some character defining element with a dark frame window, but then the windows that went in were white frame. So those were not intended or approved as white frame. They were intended to be navy blue frames.
But they're not, they don't have the muntins on them.
No.
So, but that was okay as long as the frame was.
Did the permit show that?
So the permit's currently, it's not approved. It's currently still in process. It was paused once this was the color. It was noted that the colors weren't, it wasn't going to be painted. So don't know what the final.
So not issued.
So they got it installed.
So they did it without a permit in hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was one of the questions I had. And then secondly, the siding
Can you go to exterior?
I don't know if it's really board and batten, but it's
No,
like a
it's a pattern.
it's a grooved pattern in
plywood.
the wood, and that was
T111
It's
plywood.
T111.
and that was common in the
Really common in the
80s and
80s,
90s, but was that original when this was put in the 70s?
Yes, it
That was
originally
original.
had a wood siding in a plywood fashion with that pattern to it. Michelle's going to go to the drawing here. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner the vertical lines. So that's how. So Charles Toth, I know we did a more expansive description of his background in Delray Beach in the staff report. He's notable. He's one of our important architects, obviously later than Ogren, but he came and worked with Ogren. That was his first job, coming to Delray Beach, and then went out on his own and built his office building for himself with an apartment, and was kind of common for architects. They'd have an apartment where they might spend the night there after a long night's worth of work. So he was very, his architectural style was pretty prominent in the mid-century modern / contemporary style, based on the timing of his career. So these are character-defining elements. I know it's a tough call on windows that are already installed. So, I mean, I don't know if you're asking me questions about that, but I feel like
I just want to know if they were installed with
Yeah.
a permit. To me, that makes a difference versus installed without a permit.
without a permit in hand.
But you said verbally you were going to approve or administratively, you were going to approve the same exact looking window, just new, hurricane proof with the muttons in dark blue.
Yeah, that was the admin COA. So they came in for the COA, and then it's their responsibility to go to get the permit and have the permit in hand and then do the work. And what resulted was a white frame.
Mhm.
But yes, navy blue was what was approved.
Okay.
But were there supposed to be muttons on the new
Yes.
windows? There
Yes.
were. Okay.
They were supposed
And
to look the same.
Siding, they have done some work and repair. And I want to just say this for a moment. We're thrilled to see this property coming forward for an update and being occupied by somebody who's actually in the field. I believe environmental engineering is
Civil engineering.
civil engineering. So it's kind of just thrilling to think like here we still have a person in the biz almost, right? Bringing life back to this building. But I think, is the white frames as much of a problem? That's a board decision. But the complete change of the siding, if they could even do stucco with a siding look, simulated stucco siding, I could see where the T111 is not going to be anything they can continue with. And I don't know that hardy board is something that they're interested in utilizing, but it would be nice to be able to see the stucco have some similar pattern to that vertical nature of what's out there now.
All right. Anything to add before we get into board discussion?
No comments at this time.
Okay. All right. We're going to move into board discussion. Anyone have thoughts?
Yeah, I do think that the vertical patterning is very important to this building's historical nature, and I was thinking the same idea that if it was proposed to be stucco with the same look, that I would be for that. But completely making it flat takes away, really, it's one of its few architectural big moves. So that, I think, would be more in line with the interior standards. For the windows, when I hear it, I didn't think it would be that big of an issue, but when I see the past picture with those red frames and the muttons, that also is a very prominent feature. And this can be seen from the street, this image right here. And it's kind of a shame that there's a potential to lose that. How many times do we have this happen, right, where the applicant has installed windows before they get the permit? And I don't know what the issue is. It happens more often than it should. I don't know why that happens. I know we shouldn't be thinking about that, right? We should be thinking about, if this came like this, would we approve the white aluminum frame or not, right? And I think in that situation, I would have pushed to remain with this character. There's a lot of things to be considered about. I do love this property. I love that it's getting renovated. It's important, that it's getting renovated. So, some things to think about. I'd like to hear the other board's members' opinions.
Carol or Ben?
Yeah, I know I agree with 100%. You said this is not a contributing structure, but it is very architecturally significant, and it's a very, very deliberate style from the 70s and 80s that, the vertical, the T111 look is a big part of that, and to create that in stucco is not that difficult to do. That I think that, I get that you don't want a wood siding on your building. I mean, in this environment, stucco actually is a much better, much better envelope. But I would think that that the applicant should be able to affect the vertical, vertical grooves within the stucco process, and I think that would be probably a good way to maintain the architectural character. As far as the windows go, I mean, I have powder coated windows after they've been installed, field powder coated them. It's not cheap and it's not ideal, but it can be done. You wouldn't have to replace the windows. You could bring somebody out to electrostatic them, but it's just frustrating.
What about the Muntins?
I don't have such a strong feeling about the Muntins because I guess because I'm looking for like the vertical, the vertical lines, the horizontals, not so much that didn't trouble me as much as when this building was designed, the contrasting color window frames was a real important thing to the design. They wouldn't have done it otherwise.
Can you add muttons on those windows?
You can apply muttons. I mean, you can get an aluminum mutton with the adhesive, glued in and applied in. That's not real difficult. You would just be putting a mutton on top of the glass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I agree with everyone here, and I think the applicant should go back to the original approved, and that was staff approved application, and do it according to what was approved. As far as the siding goes, yeah, I think the vertical element's very important to the building. I don't think that a flat stucco is the way to go. Like the examples shown, it was new construction that was stucco. It was a Mediterranean revival. It was stucco, and probably not a flat stucco. It was probably textured stucco. But this building, this is, we're the Historic Preservation Board, and this is the building, and that's how it was designed and it was meant to look like that. So that's, I'm not in favor of the changes as presented.
Thank you. I got a question too. So it was mentioned gray glass. So is this within the parameters that we had discussed previously when we said, gray is okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Great. That was one thing I was kind of thrilled about is they're gray. So gray would be appropriate for a non-contributor.
Mm-hmm. And then it looks like the board is leaning towards approval of stucco, but with the, detail. How particular would the board members be? Would you want to replicate the look exactly, like, 12 or 14 inches or whatever it is between the elements, or do you okay with approximating it?
I would say exactly. As
It's
exact
not-
as you can.
It's not that.
Yeah, it's one or the other, really. It's not going to make that big of a difference, but I just wanted to, when somebody crafts a motion, I want to be kind of specific so they don't have two vertical lines on each wall and say,
No,
well, there's
exactly
vertical
right. I
lines
was
on it.
thinking
You
the
know what I
same.
mean?
And how about with the windows? Do we want them to recreate the exact dimensioning? I would think so.
I mean, practically speaking, I don't know how that. I mean, like you see here, there looks like two different thicknesses. If it was an open window on the bottom, like we were talking, that looks like there's a bigger frame there, whereas the top one is a thinner. Personally, I think if it
Go back to the.
approximates the look, I mean, to me, yeah, it's a very dramatic, modernized, but and the impact windows have that thicker frame anyway, which just highlights the difference. So
Very similar.
yeah, it's pretty thick frame on the existing.
May I ask the applicant a question?
Yes.
Is it aluminum? The windows, they're aluminum?
I believe they're aluminum, yes.
Okay.
I could be mistaken there, I'm not.
Sorry, you need to come up to the podium. Thank you.
Sorry, Richard.
Yeah, I believe they're aluminum, but I'm not particularly knowledgeable about the construction of the window frames themselves.
Because that's what the approval would need to be for, is aluminum. If we later figured out that they were vinyl, they'd have to come back to you, because vinyl is not typically approved at the admin level. And also one other note, that if you were going to craft a motion that was leaning toward a stucco siding, you could put in there an option for them that they could do simulated stucco siding in a vertical pattern, or hardy board or cementitious board. So if they found that that was a more economical solution, they could do either. That way I wouldn't have to bring that back for clarification.
Simulated stucco siding with a vertical element.
Or cementitious board siding.
All right. My dad was a carpenter, and we had an addition to our house that had this exact plywood on it, and it rotted out, and he stuck it over. So,
Of course.
Especially at the bottom.
yeah, exactly. So,
It was mentioned that a full site plan with landscape plan was going to happen on this property.
That was approved at the admin level.
Okay.
So it was reconfiguration of parking, landscaping, walkways, the dumpster, the decking. There was a little patio decking up first and second floor. Thanks, Michelle. That were all part of that approval. So that was allowed to be done administratively.
What triggers it to come in front of us for that type of approval?
If they were doing the parking modification wouldn't, because that's hardscape, that wouldn't. They were doing major renovations with trees, maybe, but we've modified the code now to make that simpler for applicants, so I don't know that would come before you.
Because I thought we saw commercial landscape plans,
Yeah, I
right?
did
We
too.
don't see single family. We see commercial.
You
right?
don't see everything though if it's minor. There's the Chapter 2 updates that occurred a year or two ago, gave some admin approval for landscaping to staff. So unless it was some type of major change, it wouldn't come before you. So
It's too bad. I would have liked to have seen it.
it's coming before you now because of the architectural elevation change.
It looks major.
Yeah, I would have liked
No
to have seen the
offense.
landscape plan on this, just to see what they're proposing, to see if it maintains like a historical nature to that design. So, we'll stick to what staff thinks on that, but maybe in the future, if it can go either way, and you have two landscape architects up here, it might be good to.
I understand. We're trying to make historic as simple as possible too. Yeah.
Understood.
all right. To that end, is there anybody who wants to make a motion on this, or we have any other
I
comments?
just question the color. So the proposed color is white? Is that the right
I
color?
think staff is proposing blue.
No, I'm
Are you
talking
asking about the siding?
The siding,
Oh.
the color of the siding.
Michelle, is it white? Yeah.
It's
so
the white for the siding, yeah.
white on white.
Is that the right color?
What do you mean?
I mean, is it white or is it off-white or?
It's
I know they're proposing white, but what was the original color? Do we know?
maybe the applicant wants to answer that.
To my knowledge, for as long as I have been aware of the building, it has been this color. Our plan is to repaint it in a very similar color, if not identical.
So not white, because this is almost like a grayish
That's what I said. I
beige.
thought this looked like a gray beige.
Yeah,
kind of
grayish.
color.
I will say in person it does look more white. It could just be the lighting of the photo.
Can you go to the white frame window picture? It's very, very pale beige.
Maybe if you see the other side without the windows on it. No, the back side. That side. See, it is a very plain white color, generally.
I always thought it was like a white gray.
I remember
Beige.
this building back from the 80s. A friend of mine's father had an office in here, and it was more of a brown back then. But, you know, things change. Paints change over time. So
And that we could approve at admin. So the neutral color palettes we tend to admin approve.
we just approved pink going up on Swinton Avenue last time. So I saw that today.
We're excited for that.
All right.
So,
other?
so we're gonna say the color will be admin approved? Because on
Yes.
here it says white, right? With the white
Right, and
color.
if they change it, potentially could be admin. If it's more bold, we'd bring it back to you.
All right.
So they don't need to make any change to that part?
No change.
You don't have to change the
You don't have to
color,
say
because
anything
white
about
or
color.
neutral palette would be admin approved.
All right.
Well, don't we want, isn't it going back to blue? I don't
The
understand.
window
The
frames.
windows.
Frame.
Oh, you're talking about the,
I was talking about the field color, the
Oh, you're-
siding colors.
oh, okay.
Because I was just looking at these pictures, it didn't really look white. And I was
Understood.
wondering where the white
Sorry,
was coming
yeah.
from.
okay.
All right, so I'm going to make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness HP-117-2025 and level 1 site plan application for the property located at 250 Royal Court, Delita Park Historic District by finding that the request and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in the land development regulations, subject to the following conditions. That the stucco siding will be will simulate the vertical elements of the existing facade, and that the windows will be as previously administratively approved with the dark blue frames and mutton patterns that are existing.
That's it. Is there a second
Does that sound
I'll
right?
second.
for discussion? Does that sound good?
The mutton patterns that are existing, you mean in the previous
The
COA
previous, yes.
approval?
So the
Because they're not
previous-
existing
you're
right now,
you're right.
so
The
just want to make
previous,
sure.
Previously
um,
approved.
As,
no-
as were, you could say as were existing.
As were previously approved.
As
Or
were previously
existing on site,
existing.
yeah.
Yes,
We
with that.
understand what you mean.
And then, I don't know if you wanted to mention, Michelle had also mentioned that you could give them, options of materials to use, as long as it had that vertical pattern. I don't know if the board had consensus for that or not.
I think a vertical hardy board siding.
That-
Plank,
okay,
vertical plank siding.
Yeah, with that option as well.
Perfect.
Who seconded?
Carol.
Thank you.
All right. Brittany, can you please take the roll?
Chris Cabezas,
Yes.
Benjamin Baffer,
Yes.
Vlad Dumitrescu is absent, Richard Kasser is absent, Peter Dwyer is absent, Carol Perez,
Yes.
John Miller.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So that's it for the
quasi items.
Quasi judicial items, legislative items, anything?
No.
Okay, we have 9 presentations, so we have training.
Training. Is it open already? No.
I wonder if we should have said it had to be powder coated color. Or they might just paint it.
It has to be the same as it was approved.
Okay.
How it was originally approved, how it was, their approval.
Coated factory.
What? Thanks. It's a picture of off Marine Way looking at the bridge in the
It looks
background.
good. It's maintained.
Don't need
Okay.
training, George?
I already know this.
All right.
You should be trained.
No, I don't really, but can you, can you look at it on the,
You can watch it on TV, yeah.
yeah, how long does this training last?
Maybe an hour.
Oh, he's out of it.
Thanks for coming.
Have a good night.
Save me a beer.
Okay, so every so often we like to take an opportunity to provide the board with training, particularly when there's newer board members or updates that are happening with the code. So this is a 2-part series. The next training I'll tell you a little bit more about at the end, but that's at our next meeting on November 5th for the public who might be listening and want to watch the next training. It will be flood adaptation standards and maybe a few other things sprinkled in as well, and any questions. Some of you, I think, have all received binders from us upon starting your time as a board member. Those are helpful binders to look back on, and we're going to cover a lot of that information tonight. And if you want to bring your binders next time, if you have any questions or if you haven't brought them tonight, for note taking or anything like that, they're very helpful.
I'm sorry, the way I read the email, I thought it was next time, was the training.
I
so
did see that.
didn't
Kelly
bring
and I
mine.
talked about that.
Okay.
My apologies for not saying this and next time, but it is on the board agenda. Okay, so what is historic preservation? This information is taken from the National Park Service. Essentially, it's a conversation that we have with our past about our future and our present. Provides us opportunities to ask what's important about the history of our city or our state or our country, and what parts of that past can we preserve for the future. So this board is largely focused on preserving the built environment. But it's an important way to transmit to future generations or current generations what happened in our history and why is that important. And sometimes it's the built environment that tells that story, like Bankers Row, where you can see the grandeur of the 1920s on the west side of the street and the Mediterranean revival style of architecture, to the simplicity of the post-war recovery effort and that's impact on architecture on the east side of the road with the Bankers Row Mackle cottages. So there's very, a lot of facets. It's these stories that we want to help tell. Sometimes historic preservation involves celebrating events, people, places, ideas that we're proud of. And other times it involves recognizing moments in our history that can be painful or uncomfortable to remember. Does anyone know who this is? Call out if you do.
Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, right?
Yes. So this is Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, who's credited with being a journalist and environmentalist, helping to defend and protect the Florida Everglades. So we celebrate her work and as a historic pastime, thinking about what we're left with in the built environment today. But a painful thing is her association with Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School, where was the country's most devastating school shooting, mass shooting that had occurred. And that's a very painful memory to evoke, but it's important to tell that story for future generations, and many people are continuing to tell that story. Can you think of any of examples? Each of you, maybe you could give one example each of a happy or celebrated moment in our history, or something that might be uncomfortable or painful to remember.
Delray specific?
No, can be the country.
Well, Delray specific, we still have remnants of a wall, right, that segregated our city, right? When Delray was segregated, and
Along Lake Ida.
there was a wall, and I think parts of it still remain.
That's true.
Yeah.
I guess I think of Miami Beach with the Art Deco architecture and how that was saved because it was all getting knocked down.
Great example.
I mean, there's so many, but I mean, a painful one would be James McBride. He was a teenager who drowned off of Delray Beach because he was black and he couldn't swim on Delray Beach where it was guarded, so he had to swim on an unguarded beach. And that was
On
in the
Mother's Day.
50s.
Mhm.
And I'd say any war at all.
Good segue. So this part of my presentation is taken in piece from the presentation we did. We've done a few at Atlantic High School, trying to encourage our young folks in the community to get interested in planning, zoning, and historic preservation. So this was something we talked about with the students at Atlantic High School. And this is most of them, if not every single one of them, this is before their time. I was pregnant with my daughter in 2001 when this occurred. So these kids were that age or younger. So they didn't experience this. They've only heard about it and what it meant and shared the stories. And we talked and, where were you type of thing for us, explaining where were you and where was I that day. And I remember exactly where I was here at the city working and watched the second plane hit the tower. So this is a painful piece of history in this country. But we are celebrating those who fought for us on that day and recovered and, ran towards the fire, basically, with a memorial. I have not personally been to the memorial, but I've studied it and read about it. So this is something that we're celebrating, the memory of those who were lost on that day. So when did historic preservation start? There were efforts that began prior to the official adopting of legislation of 1966 for the National Historic Preservation Act. But does anyone know what this picture is of?
Grand Central.
Grand Central.
Penn Station. So this building was raised to make way for Madison Square Garden. It was air rights challenge, and now today they're talking about replacing Madison Square Garden. I thought this picture was interesting because the sign on the front, which it's a bit of sign littering, right? But the sign on the front happens to say, "Make more of Madison Square Garden." And how amazing would that have been if it had said, "Make more of Penn Station"? I don't know.
Madison Square Garden has become iconic on itself.
It has.
I mean, that's,
Yeah, in the time frame from 1960s forward. So that act is the cornerstone of federal historic preservation efforts and is what led us to having a historic preservation ordinance in Delray Beach. The impetus behind historic preservation Delray Beach, and John probably knows this best in his work with the Historical Society and living here, Old School Square was shuttered and fenced. The school district walked from the property. I hesitate to say the word abandoned because I don't think that the intent was to abandon it, but they closed the site. And here was this property in the middle of our downtown core at the crossroads of Atlantic and Swinton, and it was being discussed of what to do with that site. And there was discussions of a department store like Kmart or a bowling alley. And the community came together and really rallied around Old School Square and the city and said, we don't want to see that happen. So they worked hard to study our resources in the mid to late 80s, and the Delray Ordinance was adopted, 1387, in March of 1987, which created our land development regulations. It created our board, the local register of historic places. You can go on our website and see the board minutes all the way back to the first board, which is on our website. They're not very long. They're typically a page or two, but as the years go on, they get more interesting. And then Old School Square was purchased by the city from the school district. There is a deed restriction on the property that it be used for educational or cultural purposes, I believe. And the city invested in the community, and they invested in the effort for historic preservation. So we were very lucky that we were able to save this very important several structures of architecture from the 20s, the teens and 20s. And this is a little bit older of a picture, but it's still very current. Amazing what we've been able to do with this facility and how this has become something that's completely changed our downtown. At that same time, the comprehensive plan from the 80s and then in the 90s identified that there was to be a revitalization of the downtown. Basically, historic preservation set the stage. It was built on the back of historic preservation, protecting local resources, cultural resources. Northeast 2nd Avenue or Pineapple Grove Way was officially adopted as our Main Street through the Main Street America program, which is also a historic preservation program through the state of Florida. So this information I'll cover a little bit more as we go on, but this is taken directly from the Always Delray Comprehensive Plan. So I encourage you, if you haven't opened that document, it's kind of an interesting read and it's not super long. There's some important pieces there. So what's the purpose of the board? The purpose of the board, I joke that we need badges that say to protect and preserve. But that really is the role of the board, is to foster and promote recognition and preservation, protection, enhancement of our historic resources and our built environment. That the board, you all through our department, the Division of Development Services, shall also promote, and I'm just reading, certain functional aesthetic goals, objectives, and policies in our comp plan, particularly the historic preservation element, which that's a new element as of 2020. We never had a dedicated element prior to that time. Protection as it relates to the preservation of our historic resources. The board reviews all matters pertaining to COA requests for property, sites, structures located within districts or on individually designated properties. And as I get through all of the, we touch on so many different records at the city, and we come across things, and I kind of try to save them and earmark them to show you someday. And now I get to kind of show you. There's an photograph inventory of some properties, which are all in Old School Square, and you can see the one on the top is one of those photographs. In the 80s, there was decline happening in our country. The economy was not in a great position. And our downtown and our neighborhoods surrounding really were in a state of decline and disrepair. This is Dada's. You can see that I forget the name of the restaurant that it was before. Damiano's. Both of those businesses have been blessed with really amazing chefs, and that's kind of an institution those businesses were. But it's the investment and the protection of that structure that you see on the bottom there, that it's kind of famed. People say, where do you eat in Delray? Dada's always comes up. So this board is composed of 7 board members. 5 of you are required to be, and this recently was revised in our code to align with the National Park Service and state of Florida requirements for professions. So at least 5 of you need to be from the list on the left. The remaining 2 seats can be laypersons with knowledge or experience, or even folks, laypersons who own property in historic districts. These are all adopted as we are a certified local government. You'll hear me talk about that a little bit more as we go on this evening. But this is our mix. So our 2 laypersons are John Miller and Richard Kasser, and we're really blessed that both of them have, I think, breadth of experience. John with historic preservation for many years, pioneer family in Delray Beach. Mr. Kasser, I believe, has real estate and development experience. But we rely upon the professions, that you're going to understand the complexities that we're bringing forward with these projects and these staff reports. And that's why you're here, is because you're on the edge of understanding what we're working with. We make up a team of 3, Michelle, Katharina, and I, in the staff. So what does the board see application-wise? COAs, site plans, variances, waivers, landscape plans, designations, LDR amendments, conditional uses, rezonings, comp plans, concept plan reviews. It's a very long list. You typically see mostly COAs for residential. That's a lot of what you see. But we are, obviously working on the daily, our team is, on a project that's been very long running and complicated, Sunday Village. So behind the scenes, we're not just working on these, we're also working on other things like grants, permits, pardon me. So the picture on the top here is again from the 1980s of 202 North Swinton, and how wonderful that historic preservation saw that this building was retained in place, and look at the investment that the owner has made. You all saw this recently come through, and you approved this. These are the different types of things we're doing COAs for: additions, new construction, fencing, parking, carports, swimming pools. It's a very long list. I'm going to move through this quickly. We can come back if you have questions. But these are technically the board duties taken right from the code, the duties and actions. So you have quite a bit of approval authority because you are a final stop for applicants. They don't need to, for most applications, they don't need to go on to a commission to get approval. You grant approval. So you're acting on those applications that we're bringing forward for these improvements. The board can also make nominations for historic designation to the local register, the national register, working with us to increase public awareness. It's a very long list of responsibilities. You also make recommendations to the Planning and Zoning Board on LDR amendments, conditional uses, level 4 site plans. The picture on the right is the Delray Beach Historical Society. There have been changes, obviously. Positioning and buildings on that site are not exactly today as they once were, but important to show you. The notes I didn't include, but the notes in the document for this photograph were something like disbelief with how awful the property was being maintained. Not owned by the city or the Delray Beach Historical Society then. You also make recommendations to the City Commission on occasion. So Delray Beach has a total of 10,000 plus acres, 15.89 square miles, and of that, historically, the historic areas are 174 acres, approximately 575 properties. I'm showing you a property here not in a historic district, but on the edge of, and it's an original building, much in its original form. So quite amazing that we've been able to retain that structure. Here's another great structure at 334 Northeast First Avenue. These are historic district acreages, so Old School Square and Delita Park are the 2 largest, West Settlers just behind Marina, and Nassau the smallest. We have 2 of our historic districts in Delray on the National Register. Why is that important? The Marina and Old School Square District, if you're a contributor income producing property and you're doing alterations, income producing can be a rental, residential rental. You can qualify for federal tax credits in addition to the local tax credits. We have 45 listings, individual listings on our local register of historic places. 5 of those are districts, 40 are sites and structures. That's increased. I think there's been 5 added in the last 10 years, 9-ish years. These are a few photographs of local register properties. I'll move a little quickly through these, but if you haven't gone out and visited, there's many of these that you can go visit, and some have markers on them. The upper left corner is on Northwest Fifth Avenue, and it marks several sites that don't exist anymore, including school number 4, Delray Colored, which was officially the first school in Delray Beach, 1895. The Colony Hotel. Here's the DeWitt Estate on the upper right, Spady Museum, bottom right. I think we call the one on the upper left the Adams Car Dealership. It's where Azure has their office. And I forget the one on the bottom left's name. Do you remember the name of that one? It's an author, I think, who wrote Marley and Me,
Yeah.
right?
I can't remember the name.
Anyway,
I know what it is.
it's over off Vista Del Mar.
Is it Amelong?
It is. No, Amelong's, I think, on 12th or 14th. No. Anyway, the Atlantic Avenue Intercoastal Bridge is on the local register of historic places. You can go out and see the marker for the Atlantic Avenue crossing. Nationally, there are 7 sites. 2 are districts, 5 are sites. So 7 listings. And that includes, I haven't provided pictures, but most notably and most recently at the top of our list in our minds is the train station just west of I-95 and the corner of 95 and Atlantic, that the city recently did a major renovation and rehabilitation at that site. But this also includes the Sandaway House, the Marina Historic District, Sunday House. So our 5 historic districts.
Quick question.
Please, yeah.
So you mentioned the bridge, and the reason, from what I understand, it was considered or designated as contributing is because if it were to be replaced and not historic, it would look like Linton or Woolbright. It would have to be elevated. And so is Delray able to toe the line on that, and for both George Bush and Atlantic, or is sometime DOT going to come in and say, nope, you got to raise these things?
So I don't know that there's, I remember this happening when Pat Casey was here. This, I think, was the last designation she worked on before she left. There is not the distance, the width, and the intercoastal to have anything as high as Linton in this position, or George Bush, just because the intercoastal is so narrow at these points.
Woolbright would be a better example.
Yeah. Or even Woolbright, it's wider up there too. So there are some limits, and anytime I hear of things going on, I remind Public Works, hey, it's historic. I don't know that would mean that we would say no to something, and I don't think things would necessarily come before the board for review. But when federal dollars are utilized, the Section 106 process has to be run through, which comes through my office. And we are technically supposed to be seeing improvements to public infrastructure like that. We see Section 106 reviews for all the cell towers. I don't know if you've noticed how many cell towers are coming in. We see them, and if they're anywhere close to a historic site, we make comments. We've made some comments about ones on Atlantic Avenue because at the time there was a resource survey impending. And we were able to work with the cell phone provider to kind of shift some of these cell towers away from the colony because they were going to be right in front of the colony. So it does give us some control and power to protect what's called a view shed. It's not an eloquent answer, but I know it. We do get to look at things.
I really like that one to the right.
So the one to the bottom right happens to be our guest's home. This is Nassau Park Historic District. This district was created ultimately on the cusp of this dark gray area here. There was a home here. These were demolished, and new townhomes, 4 townhomes and 2 buildings were built. The entirety of every house on the street is a contributor in the Nassau Park Historic District. It's our smallest. It's the only one on the barrier island, the only one with residential use only. And when you do go and look at the comp plan, you'll see in the comp plan these blue boxes here that indicate what architectural styles are appropriate for use in every district. So, you can see here, Old School Square has a huge list of appropriate architectural styles. So if a style doesn't exist in the district, it's not something that can be introduced into the district. This is something we have to explain to applicants oftentimes. Old School Square, the namesake, is the property for the Old School Square Historic District. Something that we get confused, and applicants do too, is there is the Old School Square Historic District, which is the name of what you see in gray right here. And then there is the Old School Square Historic Arts District. That is the name of the zoning district for everything that you see in gray. So the two acronyms sound exactly the same, with the zoning district having the A in there. The building where Bull Bar once was, that's an old picture. That is the oldest commercial building within a historic district in the city. That was once known as the Rodin Building. Delida Park was the city's first subdivision, notably associated with the city's first female mayor, Catherine Link Strong, her house at the corner of Dixie Boulevard and 2nd. And we've seen quite a bit of work happening in this particular district, renovations and some new construction. That district has, to back up, it has residential and residential office. So it's kind of split in half, where we have some commercial use in there. And that historically was like that. Not from inception, but over the years, offices were constructed there. The Marina Historic District, another, our second one on the National Register, paired with Old School Square, has, like Old School Square, has some of the most structures still standing attributed to important architects. Sam Ogren, of course, he's in every district. Gustav Moss, he was responsible for the train station, Carver High School, the old Poinciana High School, school. Belford Shoemate is one of the 5 notable architects in Palm Beach, and we found building he designed. Anytime we happen upon an old permit, it's kind of exciting, to see it. We had some association with Meisner that was moved into our district, John Volk. And then West Settlers is our newest, or our most recently designated in the late 90s. Atlantic Grove, which some of you know where Ziri is, if you've gone for lunch to Ziri or dinner. That's part of the Atlantic Grove project, where if you're looking here, Atlantic Grove is right here on Atlantic, the commercial piece, but the townhomes are right here. Because it's a unified development plan, everything comes through our team for review. So anybody wants to do something in the commercial pieces, even though it's technically not in the district, the historic team reviews it, because a huge chunk of that project is. The bottom left is Mount Olive Church and Mount Olive Baptist Church. This was late 1800s, original structure to the district. National Register of Historic Places, sometimes there's thoughts that it's more stringent of an application for requirements, where it's actually completely the opposite. It's an honorary designation. Being a National Register property does not require the review by my staff and I, or anybody at the city, against LDR's, Secretary of the Interior standards, design guidelines. Changes that happen to a federally listed property, National Register, we would, if people were asking questions about it, we would refer them to the state of Florida, who would talk with them, because changes to a property affecting its character could affect its listing on the National Register. The big thing with the National Register is the tax benefit that somebody could get for improving a National Register property. So this board has to make findings. As you know, you see this in our staff report. The 4 pillars here are the Delray Beach Comprehensive Plan, the design guidelines, the Delray Beach design guidelines, the Secretary of the Interior standards, and the Delray Beach land development regulations, including the section 4.5.1. Positive findings mean that you approve or support a request, and a failure to make positive findings is a denial. I do encourage you to go look at this. At the very end of the presentation, you'll see where you can go to our website and access all of this information. This document is just so interesting to me. The DIA is the one I would suggest you read, Data Inventory and Analysis first, and then read the goals, objectives, and policies. The DIA includes all kinds of information, a historical timeline, which you can see starts right down here in the bottom corner. It's a few pages long. That timeline was created by the Zion Study Circle. This study circle was put together when there was the community was at odds. What history was first, the black community or the white community? And the history was different for each. And so the Zion Study Circle came together and brought that history together and told that story. So we've put that story, that history, in the comp plan directly from the August 2006 meeting of time frame, start of the Zion Study Circle. And that group was compiled by our city commission and bringing the community together. So if you can, please go take a look. It's quite interesting. This is a presentation graphic that I've created for Atlantic High School. And you'll have access to this presentation. If you want it on flash drive, we can give it to you, or you can go back and watch this video. But I think it's important to note that our history really began in 1876 when the Orange Grove House of Refuge was built. The House of Refuge was on the beach. It was where the barefoot mailman would come and stop as he was delivering mail up and down the coast of Florida. I'm going to move past this. You can take a look at that history in the comp plan. The goals, objectives, and policies. This is the first GOP element for historic preservation at the city ever. Our items were kind of housed and sprinkled in through the old comp plan. This brought it together and brought a single vision of what needed to happen for historic preservation in Delray Beach. So this is a framework that essentially guides our land development regulations and the processes we're moving forward with on a daily basis. You'll see in there to study, I think we put to study the cemetery for potential designation. So we had goals that we're trying to achieve. The one that we use in your staff reports, you'll see is policy HPE 1.41. And this requires that the board make findings that any land use or development application for historic structure, site, or property within a district is consistent with the provisions of the LDRs, the Secretary of the Interior standards, and the design guidelines. So those aren't soft asks, those are required by our comp plan. There's also compliance with the Delray Beach Historic Preservation Design Guidelines. I have not sprinkled a ton of photos in here of this, but you can go look at this too. This is a document that guides us. So an applicant comes in, they want to change their siding, they want to change their windows. This is a resource for them as much as it is for us to look and say, what is the appropriate method to do that? The visual compatibility standards, you guys hear us talk about this in our staff reports. These were put in place in the late 2000s or modified significantly in the late 2000s to address specific visual issues. To make sure that the changes that were coming through for a property or a structure were compatible with the historic district or the historic structure or the non-contributing structure. So this was created in concert with a consultant. This was not a staff-created portion of our code. This was something we hired a professional to come and help us create these standards. The ones that tend to come before you in waiver fashion most often are the additions. This is 451E7M. It's at the end of the section. And it says, additions shall not be forward of front wall plane of a building, shall be as inconspicuous as possible, should not change the character of the building. These feel like they're subjective, but sometimes they're very blatant. An addition comes right forward of the front facade. That's a problem, and somebody might need a waiver for that. and then the secondary and subordinate. So that is where we rely upon you as a board. Here's the analysis in the staff report, and you are the deliberating and decision-making authority to say, okay, this is not appropriate or this is appropriate. Maybe a waiver or relief request is required. This approval matrix is in the back of this document right here, the design guidelines. So what the board did was they, alongside of previous to me, with the previous director, they promulgated a list in concert with our director of what could be approved at the admin level and what can be approved at the board level. It also allows that anything we aren't comfortable with, we have the ability to refer to the board. So sometimes that happens where it's kind of teetering on the edge of, can we approve that? But we have quite a bit of administrative authority. We might be coming to you in the future to talk about what else can we add to this list? What else can we add to make the process easier for the applicant and ultimately for you? The Secretary of the Interior standards, these are 10 standards. These pertain to historic buildings. These are put together by the Department of the Interior, National Park Service, and these 10 standards you see in every staff report. Sometimes on the screen they're kind of small. But the ones that typically apply most, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 9 and 10 back here. Ultimately, this is to ensure that the integrity of historic structure is protected for the longevity, ultimately ensuring the legitimacy of the district it's in. So you start changing buildings, the district its legitimacy can erode over time. And I'll show you an example of that in a few minutes. This is what that book looks like. It's big. If you had it printed, 2 sections of it is 3 inches. These aren't just guidelines, what's in this book. There are guidelines, as you see here, and we put these in staff reports and presentations of what the recommended and not recommended approach is to a whole myriad of things. Metal, wood, windows, additions, building site. So if somebody's coming in and they want to replace their windows, the recommended approach, using window grids rather than true divided lights on windows, the upper floors of high-rise buildings, if they will not be noticeable, is a recommended approach. Some of these things over time have modified slightly, and there's guidance provided to us from the National Park Service on some things that are adjusting. Modernization, particularly windows for areas like Florida, where we have hurricanes, right? We may not be able to meet all of these standards, and this provides the approach. Well, yes, they're guidelines, but they're designed as how you can get into compliance with the 10 standards. So they're guidelines to the 10 standards, and they are required to be met. This is an example. You can see on the left the original building with its windows, and it had very character-defining windows. You can see particularly in the arch. I believe they're double-hung windows. And this was considered by the National Park Service as an inappropriate modification because the windows on the right, can anyone tell me like what the problems could be with the building on the right? The windows?
There's no muttons. They closed in the windows at the top.
Mm-hmm. So yes, there's no muttons on the arches. The windows in the top have been closed in, but do you also notice how much smaller in the window opening the windows are on the right versus the windows on the left? So the overall size of the window, it was basically possibly a stock purchase of windows rather than a custom purchase, or perhaps there was issues with stability, that instead of replacing the wood and the mullion, which is the divider between the windows, looks like it went from wood to maybe concrete or stucco. So it seems like it's nuanced, but the trained eye walking by this building on the right would see that that change had been made. that's a character defining feature, that don't meet the standards. So why is all of this important? Inappropriate additions, alterations, renovations, relocations, demolitions, those inappropriate changes over time, like I said, erode that district. But as a certified local government, which the city is through the state of Florida, we are required to uphold, and your decisions are required to uphold those standards, LDRs, and guidelines. Being a CLG offers us a lot of benefits. One of the most notable is that we get to apply for grants. And while they're called small matching grants, we actually don't have a match requirement. So if we had the bandwidth to do it, we could be submitting for grants up to $50,000 each, $100,000 per year, every single year. We were pushing and doing this for a while and got several projects done through the state of Florida. The GIS map, the scanning project, the cemetery. There's several that we've gotten. If we weren't a CLG, we wouldn't be entitled to that match-free grant opportunity. We are required to report all actions, staff-approved applications, board-approved applications, who the board members are, what your resumes look like, prove that you're qualified applicants. There's a report. Michelle Hewitt is working on this right now that's due every November to the state of Florida, reporting our activities. So while it seems like a soft benefit, it's important that we prove that we're upholding the requirements of our own ordinance. So now we're going to talk about threats to historic preservation. The one that's happening most notably right now is the king tides. So last week we had a full moon and it intersected with a high tide. We had some of the highest tides I think we've had in several years. We were hearing about the properties, particularly in the Marina District. That's our one historic district that's right on the intercoastal, with their flooding happening. And the city is working on a project to improve flood resiliency, but that is a major threat to preservation. Next meeting, we're going to talk about the flood adaptation guidelines that the National Park Service put together as a way to help property owners make their property more resilient to these changing tides.
It's not just changing tides, it's sea level.
Sea level rise,
Sea level rise.
sorry. Yeah, climate change.
Because, king tides have been happening
Hundreds
forever,
of years, yeah.
And nobody built a street to be underwater 100 years ago.
That's right, yeah. This is an example of a property in the Marina Historic District that was vertically elevated. The trained eye can see that change by the brick skirting that's around the building. This building would have had a concrete base around it and the wood siding almost probably 6 inches to the ground, if not right at the ground, and now it sits up higher. Other threats to preservation, and this is an example that also is in the Marina Historic District, but not necessarily completely because of flood levels and sea level changes, but inappropriate alterations, demolition, new construction. So the area that you see, sometimes I refer to this in some of our presentations. This entire section of the Marina Historic District was removed in the 2008 time frame because so much inappropriate changes had occurred. Demolitions, new construction, additions that were completely inappropriate for structures. So when the consultant came through to do a resurvey, they were like, did this get approved by the board? They did. The recommendation was this is no longer appropriate to even call this a historic district, and the whole almost entire block south of 3rd Street was removed. Other threats are maintenance, and there is a code now as of 2018 that the property owner is required to maintain their property in good order, free of wood rot, free of termites. If they don't and it leads to demolition, the board, you all have the authority to deny a property owner following a demolition due to neglect from reconstructing anything on that property for 5 years. That's also in LDR 451, the historic section.
When, that I'm not familiar with. When was that put in?
That was 2018.
Really? Okay.
That was a result of the Historic Preservation Task Force, which was underway before I came to the city. Members of the task force included Joanne Pert as the chair, Claudia Willis, Carolyn Patton, Roger Cope, number of other people. And they were charged with looking at ways to strengthen preservation in Delray Beach. And this is one of the places they started. In addition to a number of other great things, they added maintenance requirements for historic properties.
Has that ever been tested?
We use it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. The property, and I'm only going to use them as an example because they've done such a great job, is Swinton Social, which really was the property that was the impetus behind this code, because a developer came along, purchased the property, and stopped maintaining the property. This is just east of Sunday Village, so Swinton,
Those little cottages on the
south
east
of
side
Atlantic.
It wasn't built.
Oh, okay, I remember.
Yeah.
There are 4 little small wood frame cottages.
Came in front of us like a couple months ago.
Mhm.
Yeah. So there's new owners now. When those new owners took ownership, the code enforcement violation was reissued to the new owner. They didn't know what that meant. We worked very closely with them. One of the houses, we believe it was a homeless person, went in and a fire had started, and the inside was like the inside of a barbecue grill. And we walked it. We walked inside, no floorboards, just walking on the floor joists, and they had to bring that up to snuff. And they understood that if they wanted to, demolish it, it was going to be as a result of neglect, and then you would have that ability to refuse. It's called scorched earth, to refuse construction of anything new on the property. So yes, this is being used. It's very serious. Code enforcement has been trained just recently again in how to use that code section. Other threats are things that happen, acts of God. This is on Nassau Street as well. I don't have the after photo to show you, but this did end up turning out to be a really lovely project. But at the time, this big section of the west side of the building caught on fire, smoke damage on the interior. It was in dire shape. So this was an act of God, can be a threat to historic preservation. This is not a historic building, but can anyone tell me what this is?
The wine room?
Yeah?
Is it called Wine and Spirits?
Do you know the name of what that building was before?
Arcade Tap Room?
The Arcade Tap Room. So the Arcade Tap Room is an original 1920s Sam Ogren building, important for its architecture, but also its association with culturally important people in our community, including Herb Roth and Fontaine Fox. These were the cartoonists, the artists of why we are called an artist colony from the 30s, because they would have their offices up there. They'd go work for a little bit, and then they'd go downstairs and have libations at the Arcade Tap Room. So it was quite a popular location. So the front of the building is still intact. Little to no changes happened. You can see it up here. So I'm taking a picture from the alley, but the entirety of the back of that building was removed and reconstructed, new foundations. We tried really hard to get the detailing around the arch in the front of the building to be brought back to what it was originally, and it did change somewhat. We didn't have purview over this, but I still tried to kind of squeeze my way in and help the owner and say, this could be historic one day, let us help you. So inappropriate alterations are a threat to historic preservation. I don't think this was inappropriate. The important piece is the building facing Atlantic, the piece in the back, which was a later addition. That is all gone.
Did they enclose part of that?
It used to be open air when it was built.
Yeah, but the front curved arch Didn't they enclose some of it and put a door and an elevator or something on the side?
So you can actually see tiny bit of evidence in the left picture where the column, the roof, the doorway beyond, those were all later additions. So that was to accommodate an elevator that never existed there. But that was done a long time ago. But John's right, it was open air in the middle, and over the years they had added a really beautiful glass ceiling in the building. All of that is different now. But the historic bar in the corner is still there, which is what they call the speakeasy. And the stories, if you want to go sniff out the stories a little bit better than I might tell them, there used to be what I've heard a tunnel from the bar that went out underneath the building during Prohibition times, and that was how it was a place where you could drink, have alcohol. Do I have that wrong, John?
No, I don't know. I think it's hearsay. Now, in the Colony
Before your
Hotel, they do have a kind of a cellar
Mm-hmm.
in the Colony, and I think maybe that's where that corner sort of.
Oh, wow.
You would never know it's there, but it's kind of cool. So
I know it's there because I do yoga there, and you don't want to be on top of that door.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
But so the arcade tap room, it was the courtyard area. It was just open there. There was like
Had a
no
big
wall
fountain.
up.
Yeah,
There was a building that wrapped it.
It was like little shops all the way
Courtyard.
around it.
Yeah.
like
Open
Okay.
courtyard. I remember when the Brazilian steakhouse was there, gold. And I think it had the glass ceiling maybe
Yeah,
at that time.
yeah,
Yeah,
When
the
I was
neighbor
a-
moved in, that was when the renovation took place.
yes. Yeah, when I was a kid, I can remember what it was like. It was almost like a villa, like you would see in Palm Beach, because the building and the shops that wrapped it and the offices above were all part of like kind of off the Ave commerce.
This is off topic, but near here, wasn't there a pharmacy that also had like a juice bar inside?
So there was the nutrition cottage that was right next door, I think.
Yeah.
That was nutrition store, and they had a juice bar in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
That's right. I always think about that when I see this. I used to go in.
Yeah, I loved the nutrition cottage. I went to high school with their daughter. That was the Stowe family. So preservation. So this is an example of, and we in Delray Beach have been moving houses around for a very long time. The CRA office building was moved, and the building next to it came from the airport. Mr. and Mrs. Harden's home, they don't live there now, but it's called the Harden Hart House, added to the registry a few years ago. That was moved from West Palm. This was all taken from
Theirs came down the intercoastal on a barge.
These all did, yes. They all came, it was called a parade of homes, and it was in the newspaper, and they all came down the intercoastal to Knowles Park, down off 10th and Federal, and then they were slowly moved in through town. This example is, the name of it is escaping me right now, but this, I'll show you the house, and then we'll come back. This is on the Barrier Islands. Price House, maybe?
No, that was Joyce DeMoose's house.
Yeah, but I think it's officially called the Price.
Oh, could have been.
Is it?
It was over, but that one was on A1A.
Yeah. And so this is a documented Sears kit home. Gary Oleopoulos was involved with this project. It says Sam Ogren was built and designed by him, but Gary had done some research through the time frame when this was happening, and there was belief that it was documented Sears kit home. I don't know. I think it's associated with Sam Ogren, and that's its grandeur. But either way, it was moved. I did get a chance. Thankfully, Joyce let me come see it right before she sold it. It's so cute inside, and it's got a really nice size addition on the back. It's double frontage. That addition accesses Beach Road and has a driveway in the back. But this is an opportunity to show you an example of preservation. So this was individually designated after it was moved. Another example, this is believed to be Sam Ogren's home, his home that he designed and built for himself. It's not listed, it's not protected, but I will say that I watched the owners do their whatever they did over the time frame that they did it, and I'm thankful that they left it pretty much intact on the exterior. This is on North Swinton, just north of Lake Ida Road on the west side. So now we're going to talk about some benefits. The Carl Elefante, we mentioned him in our comprehensive plan. He wrote an article that stated, and this is what his entire belief is based on. You should go to his website, carlelefante.com. Pretty cool. Go and visit that. That the greenest building is the one that's already built. And his belief was that essentially, his belief is that preservation essentially is a form of sustainability, adaptive reuse of structures, keeps those structures out of the landfill, and reduces our climate change impacts, right? So if we're adaptive reuse, the ultimate effect at the long road here is it's going to help keep our planet cool. And this is taken from our comprehensive plan. Historic preservation is the original pure form of sustainability. So sustainability, we're thinking reusable grocery bags or electric cars. But I think we fail to look at how historic preservation really has an impact on our planet, that we are making sure our vitality is in place for future generations. So I encourage you to go read about him, read his thoughts. I was on his website again today, making sure it was all up to date. There's some really interesting things and articles. Go read what he has to say. It's kind of enlightening. And why is preservation important? Obviously, the incentives seem like they're more soft incentives once you get out of the tax incentives. Pride of ownership tends to be one of the incentives that we express to property owners, but it oftentimes is the person that wants to be a part of the city that they live in. They enjoy owning a piece of that history and becoming a shepherd and a steward for that history. But what does it do for our economy? It improves our local, regional, state economy through tourism, because people come to visit cultural sites. They want to go to museums. If you think about the trips you've taken, like how many of you have been to St. Augustine? I think we probably all have. And you're going there to see the architecture, to see the forts, to see the fountain of youth that Columbus thought he found. Or not Columbus, Ponce de Leon, thank you. So you're going to visit spaces because you want to learn more about it. You go to the beach to enjoy the beach, but you a lot of times go and visit Ireland or Scotland because you want to see the old castles, right? Or the old construction and architecture. This gentleman, I meant to put his name on here. His name is Donovan Ripkema. He came and spoke at our Atlantic Avenue Historic Symposium that we had. So if you want to hear him speak, he spoke there. And it's pretty interesting to listen to him. I've also listened to him at a session that they had at the Delray Beach or the Palm Beach Preservation Foundation. And his thoughts, what he was doing as a preservationist and an economist, is he was studying what was happening in our country over the long decades part of our history, but then all the way up to our recession in the 2000s. And what he was able to find in his research is that property values either stayed where they were or they rose for properties in historic districts or historically designated properties. So his research, and you can go on his website too, it's very interesting. You can go back and listen to him at the symposium. But he really believed that historic preservation is a central building block for so many things in addition to our economy. And here you can see this graphic pie chart is taken from the state of Florida Historic Preservation Comp Plan document. This was done in the late 2000s. where they also, and this is from that same document, this is from our comp plan. I took the information from the state and inserted it here. We're looking at billions of dollars brought into our state through heritage tourism and historic preservation. It solidifies jobs in addition to tourism, trade. You want to go and work on a building, maybe you're a specialty tradesman. The retail industry has implications here, in-state wealth, jobs and income. I mean, it's just amazing when you read all of this information. And we don't think about it in the context of what we're doing. We are thinking about this one little building on Swinton, and we go back. Now I'm thinking I should have put some of those old pictures, the before and afters, after this part right here, so you could see how amazing our city has turned over the years because of historic preservation. So here is our website, delraybeachfl.gov/historic. We'll bring you to the base. You're going to want to make sure you click on HP Regulations and Maps over on the sidebar here. And these icons will link you into all of these documents we've covered tonight. There's also maps here that you can access as well if you want to look at graphics. But this is where the LDRs, the Delray Design Guidelines, the Secretary of the Interior Standards, the comp plan, all of that's right here. We encourage you to go and look at these documents and get familiar, because there is so much on you responsibility-wise to continue to be making the decisions that you're making with our board. Does anyone know what this is other than John? Yes? I know Carol and John are nodding. How about Ben or Chris?
No.
Mr. Powers.
Who's the tall guy?
Parade down Atlantic, right?
This is the St. Patrick's Day Parade.
The pig.
The Powers. Was it Maury?
Lori.
Yep. And the green pig. So you did used to have a green pig. We're not allowed to do that anymore. But
The
and
first parade was just him and the pig.
yeah,
Trying to catch it.
this is how I remember Delray Beach as a kid. And this is today. So we greatly appreciate your dedication, your service, listening to me go on tonight and kind of stress the importance of our regulations and our codes. We just want you to be armed with as much information as possible, because if the state were here doing a presentation, it would be all focused on defensible decision making. I think at our next meeting, we may have some things that Kelly and I might work on together to bring to you about defensible decision making and your role as a board. But thank you for your service and your dedication and for doing such a great job. Our next training, November 5th. Please try to come. If you don't think you can come, let us know in advance, but you can always go back and watch the meeting if you had to. It looks like a fairly light agenda, so it should be similar to the timing as what this is here. But we're going to cover those flood adaptation standards and kind of give you a short course on that. Any questions?
That was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm glad that somebody put some statistics and some math behind what, and I think I got this line from you, that communities with a stronger commitment to historic preservation also have higher property values.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about Palm Beach, Miami Beach, Coral Gables, Key West, St. Augustine, Delray. I mean, it's not a chicken or the egg. I mean, the two are linked, and I've been telling people that forever and ever, but I'm glad that now there is some statistics behind it.
Yes, and it's in the comp plan.
Yeah.
So if you ever wanted to go look at the numbers a little closer, you can look at them there, but also look at Donovan Ripkema and his website and the research he's done and the studies he's done. It was actually myself, Price, and Roger were all at the Preservation Foundation in Palm Beach the first time I heard him talk. And we all walked out of there kind of like gobsmacked that, wow, I had no idea about historic preservation and its impact on property values. It was amazing. So it would be a good resource if you like the numbers. You can go look at his stuff too. Anything else?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I mean, Delray got lucky too because a lot of the money in the 60s and 70s and 80s flowed to Boca. They got redeveloped and built up, and people left Delray alone. And then when it got rediscovered, there was already some guidelines in place.
I love that way of looking at it, that we got lucky that they walked.
Yeah, I mean, they were talking about 4-laning Atlantic all the way to the beach.
Yeah.
There was, the big box over in Old School Square. There's all kinds of
Roy, before he
4-laning
passed,
Swinton even. That was under discussion.
he talked to me a bit about, and Swinton technically is designated as historic Swinton Avenue, although it doesn't fall under any kind of historic purview of the board. But talking with Roy Simon the year before he passed, he was telling me a bit, and we were trying to figure out how we could help the colony replace their awnings without DOT requiring some type of agreement, because that's what was happening. And I was like, just do it. No. But Roy, he was telling me about his experience with Atlantic Avenue back when DOT was looking at widening it even more than they did. And I can't imagine what the fronts of those buildings would have looked like if they'd taken any more. So
Personally, I still think they should get rid of the parking, just widen the sidewalks. But that's just me.
anytime I go to a city, a historic old town. I mean, the one that comes to memory for me most recently is Thomasville, Georgia. There's a few others, but they still have the diagonal parking along their roads. It's a little tricky crossing those roads, even though they're not as busy as ours. It's just still broader, But I always thought if they didn't get rid of the parking, why not put at least like in front of the Colony, Atlantic Crossing, all the way to the bridge, like a landscaped median. Kind of bring the road feel a little smaller, which is what they did. Big changes to Federal back in the 90s and early 2000s. They really made Federal Highway feel more narrow, more pedestrian friendly. So it wasn't such a big expanse to get across.
On Clematis, they brought the street level to the sidewalk level, so it slows traffic down because if you feel like the people are right there.
Yeah.
So that's a traffic calming technique, and it makes it's not expanding the space, but it makes it feel like you have more space.
It does.
Makes it feel more pedestrian, but also the cars don't have a curb, and they sometimes end up on the sidewalk.
They've put a lot of bollards in. I think it was
a lot of bollards
unintended.
that actually get hit.
Yes, I think it was unintended consequence of the design was they had to protect the pedestrians some way, so it became vertical bollards, planters.
Does look really good though.
Yeah.
It does, yeah.
They could be lighting too, the bollard, so it serves two purposes.
True. Well, thank you all.
That was great. Do we have any other comments or items or anything like that?
Just that our next meeting's November 5th, so it's just 2 weeks from now. You'll be getting an agenda in the next week or so on that.
Any board member comments?
I've got a comment. We've been getting all these ask for forgiveness applicants.
Rather than asking permission.
And I think a lot of them know that they probably shouldn't do it because these people already had an approval. They already knew what they were approved for. I'm meeting the applicant today as an example. But they went ahead and did it anyway. There's also a contractor out there that is going ahead and installing something without a permit in hand. And I don't know what to do about this. I mean, I've been thinking about it, but it's almost like you have to make these contractors, like you got to hit them with something.
Well, that is a violation of statute, right? And it would, I think, be enforceable through through our building department. But as a licensed contractor, if I was to go do work without a permit, I could lose my license, and I don't understand why that's not enforced. And maybe it's who's got the responsibility for actually filing that complaint, because I think what it would take is somebody filing a complaint against that contractor's license, because it's very serious. It's a very, very serious.
It's costly to to the owner, because now this owner, maybe they were told they could do it, or I'm not sure, but it's costing someone money to do it.
Well,
It's what, you want to be development friendly with that, and you want them to improve their property because they are undertaking something. But I just don't understand the mentality of why they feel they can go outside all these boundaries that have already been established.
Well, case in point is the property on the northeast corner of Lake Ida and Second, Alice Speck's old property, and they came before us. We said no or come back with a better plan, and they did it anyway. And I don't think there's been any repercussions on it, so I don't know. I know it's being handled through code enforcement, but
Yeah, I know it's super frustrating, but it is something that has to be handled on the code enforcement or potentially building side as well. And all I can say while you're up here is you just have to treat it like as if it was before you the first time, before they did it. Not give them any benefit or any negative about it, and just treat it because because the code enforcement board is the one that is the their ideal position is compliance, so they are the ones that are trying to get the people into compliance, but a tool that they use to do that is through fines. So they
when they're applying for these applications, is there do you staff do you guys approach them and say, hey, look, if you do anything X, this will happen?
So we do this all the time.
Uh-huh.
We explain from beginning to end how it's important that they not do the work prior to having a permit in hand. It's always at the top of our list to discuss. Mm-hmm. And while Kelly may stop me, I am going to say, as a board, it's up to you to decide what's okay and what's not for the legitimacy of that structure, right? So if you decide that doesn't meet our code requirements, I think we've had some instances in the past where the board's like, wow, it's going to be expensive to replace all those windows. That's not the consideration that you're charged with. You're charged with, is this an appropriate alteration for this house? Whether it's been done or not isn't the point. Is it appropriate? So at some point, there's going to be a straw that's going to break the camel's back. An example project.
I just think that if it was just if people knew more about this, or they the contractors themselves knew. Maybe it's not the applicants, maybe it's the contractors. I don't know, but we get this a lot.
I won't single out a
specific
applicant,
yeah.
But the ones that tend to do it the most have been warned not to do it, and they do it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
that is what we've found. As far as the one on Second, we've had meetings recently. There are holds on permits that they can't have COs for. So because of this, and so they want to come into compliance because they want those COs. So there's some things that I've been able to do, but it has to be done through code enforcement. And they are coming forward, is what they've said. And I've said, you said it before, but
3 years.
When are we going to see it? At what point? So
Okay.
I think there's some controls, but Carol, when I started, it was a free-for-all of people doing work without permits. It was just a free-for-all.
Yeah, I don't understand.
So
it
think
puts us in a bad position. It puts us all in a bad position, and it doesn't happen. This isn't just a little bit. This happens every single meeting.
Oh yeah, we're
That's
the
why.
bad guy.
That's
Yeah.
why I'm just speaking up about it, because we don't want to be in that. We don't want to be in that position either.
some
Even
of
though I
the-
know we're supposed to do what we got to do,
No.
and we do what we got to do, but it's frustrating.
I don't think the
I
fines are high
completely
enough,
understand.
in my opinion. They're irreversible and irreparable is what, $15,000 fine? I don't think that's enough.
Cost of doing business these days.
I think it's just the cost of you wrap that into the cost of the project, and if it's 1%, maybe in some instances, so what?
There
So
are certain things that are defined by statute, by code, so it just depends on what is, appropriate.
All right, we're exactly at 7 o'clock, so I'm going to
That's it? It's only 7?
call this adjourned. If anybody has any objections.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you so much.
All right.